So I'm super excited to have with me today Annie Holcombe, and you probably know Annie from the podcast The Real Women of Vacation Rentals. But Annie also has a very busy full-time job. So you'll tell us about that. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining me. Always good to talk to a fellow podcaster.
Oh, Heather, it's an absolute honor. You are just the OG podcaster, the OG rental manager. You're all of the OG things, like just wrapped into one.
What does OG mean?
Old guard.
Oh, old guard.
As we were going to talk about.
As we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we are going to talk about that. We're going to talk about whether, I should be wiped out because I'm old guard.
No, absolutely not.
So just give us a background on your role now and where you've come from.
Oh gosh, so I have a woven tapestry of experience. I started out in hotels, front desk, worked for every kind of hotel brand along the coast in the Panhandle of Florida where I live. Lucked into a company that decided they wanted to break into vacation rentals in the late 90s. Worked for them for several years, then started a management company with my husband and two coworkers. Did that through the last real estate downturn and oil spill, and then ultimately ended up over at an OTA Expedia. Worked there for 4.5 years handling, I always joke, the non-traditional lodging, which is the vacation rental segment of business. Then worked for channel management. And now I find myself back in the OTA space. So I'm the director of business development for US and Canada with Marriott Homes and Villas.
Wow. Now that is experience. That's
a lot.
A lot of experience. Yeah. When I go back to I've had 20 years experience as a property manager. That is nowhere near the breadth that you bring. And I know that, you're out there sharing a lot of that experience and expertise on LinkedIn. And I follow you on LinkedIn and love the posts that you make. But there was one that you made recently that really struck a chord with me because it was about an article in Skift, one of those same old articles that have been appearing over the last 6 months or so. Not going to mention I am mentioning it, the collapse article by Nick Gurley, which, if it was clickbait, which clearly that title was, it definitely achieved what it set out to achieve. But there's been a lot of articles about short-term rental saturation and corrections and home sales. You said something that really resonated with me from that. You said, we've been saying for months, this is not a get-rich quick business, and people need to understand how to build a strong one that can stand the ebb and flow of travel. So I wanted to explore this a little bit more, figure out, where we are with people that are coming into the industry, because there are going to be those who came into the industry at that time.
Yeah.
And are appreciating that maybe it was too much for them, the promises that were made to them, for whatever reason, they are not able to make the success of it that they thought they would. What needs to happen now for those who are remaining in the industry, they're not selling, and maybe for those who are coming in and taking those first steps? So let's have a big overview from you. Where do you think we are with the people that came into the industry in 2020, 21, maybe 22 as well, and particularly for those who are hoping to stay in?
I think, again, going back to like experience, I've been through a lot of things in my career that are kind of like those big bellwether events, like big things that change the direction of whatever business you're in. And again, I live in the Panhandle of Florida. We're prone to hurricanes, so been dealing with hurricanes and tropical storms and those type of things for years. Have that pretty well set. Had an oil spill, and that was something that had, unprecedented in my life. So that was a new thing to deal with. Then we had an economic downturn just about the same time as the last kind of real estate bubble, if you will. And then we had COVID. And it's like you look back over the breadth of my career, I've been in all these different facets of the industry. But the one thing I know is that, tourism is a staple. People feel that traveling is their God-given right, and they're going to do it. And so I think what we saw in COVID is people just needed to get out there, and it's shown a light on vacation rentals that we've never really had before. Now, we've been doing this business, you 20 years, I've been in this over 25 years in various facets of it. It's been around for a really long time. We're not new. And, we have an opportunity now with this light that's been shown on us to welcome people in. And I think we're all excited about, again, the growth and more people stepping in the industry. But it's really going to take the old guard giving an olive branch to people that think they're the new guard or they're coming in and they want to be part of this business, and helping them understand that it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're going to be in this, you're either going to be in it for years or you're going to be in and out really quick. And the ones that are in and out really quick came in it with the mindset of like, I'll buy a piece of real estate, I'll be able to rent it for more than my mortgage is, and then I'll sell it and make a bunch of money. What they didn't think about was the fact that they were buying at the height of what real estate was going to get to, especially if they bought in the last 12 months, and they just didn't have a plan. They didn't understand all the things that go into managing properties, from just permitting and dealing with hiring the staff, making sure you're doing the marketing, your distribution, your revenue management. Like, there's all these pieces that are fundamental basics that I don't think that, again, there's not a playbook. There's not any one that runs exactly the same. So it's hard to say like, here's your roadmap and this is the way you do it. But I do think that people got in here with the wrong sense of what direction they were going to be headed. And now they're just kind of at a crossroads. Like, do I get out? Do I stay in? And I think for us, people that have been in it for a long time, it's incumbent upon us to like reach out to them and say like, okay, we want to help you. We want you to be successful, because I've said this, to several people, regarding like Vacasa as an example. If they're not successful, it's a black eye on the industry. Like, we want them to succeed. We want them to, be a publicly traded company that people will look at and be proud that they represent our industry. I could just go on for days about it. There's just so many different ways to take it, but we really have to bring all of the segments of the business together to lift each other up.
Yeah, there's a number of things that you said there that I'd like to touch on. One of them is there is no sort of, you cannot apply a one piece of education and say this is what you have to do. You have to do this, this, and this, and you will be successful. And I think this is what's been happening with some of the. I mean, we've all seen the ads. Come and take my course and learn this business in 3 weeks for $1,500. Because what is being taught is by the people who've only been in the industry for probably that same amount of time.
Right.
So when you say it's incumbent on us that have been here a long time to mentor, support these people, how do we do it? How do we get that message across to them that there is this wealth of information and education and mentorship out there?
Well, I think it's about networking. It's about calming the noise that's out there. Again, there's a lot of clickbaity posts and clickbaity articles that'll get out there. And that's fine. If people if they're looking for followers or they're looking for likes, I mean, there are going to be people that do that. But I think we just have to be consistent. We have to be, available to people. I know I have a private group on LinkedIn, and I just call it VR Mentor Meetup, and we just go post and share and trade articles. And it's only been going on for a little while, so I don't expect it to be anything big. But I think it's just, if everybody would take something that, like, one piece that they're very passionate about and focus on that and be available to people. I mean, one thing that I really don't want to get into, and I see some of it is negativity, like putting other people down for the sake of them, themselves. And it's like, again, we're all in the same business, regardless of what, whether we're urban or we're, a traditional market, we're all trying to do the same thing. And if we can get our voice together and open up more opportunity for people to share and have a judgment-free zone, if you will. I mean, LinkedIn is a really great place, but sometimes it can get a little negative, and we just need to be there and be consistent about offering support and offering help. And one big thing, a big opportunity that I know we have is with VRMA. I think VRMA, they opened up their membership a couple of years ago to welcome in independent owners or smaller operators. And that was a really great start. But I think we need to continue to drive the point home that we're not just vacation rentals, we're short-term rentals, we're everything in between. And that's where I think it probably got a little, people got entrenched in their camps as, I'm a vacation rental property manager, I'm a short-term rental property manager. At the end of the day, we're doing the same stuff. It just depends on what market you're in. I look at it's more urban versus traditional. But we have such an incredible dearth of knowledge just sitting. You're an example. You've got so much information. We need to have you hosting webinars, hosting conferences, being on stage, instead of having some of these some more sensational types on stage to get people riled up. Yes, it's exciting, and maybe people, really get energized by it, but are they learning anything from it? And so I think we have to find a balance between the excitement and showmanship and the education, and bring all that together.
I think you're right. And you sort of referenced there's two camps. There seems to be two camps. I think from the side of the more traditional rental managers and operators, the people who've been around, we don't necessarily see ourselves in a camp. I think we seem to be more encouraging to bring the newcomers in to teach and to mentor and to network with than perhaps those who are seeing themselves as the new guard, the new entrants. I interviewed Avery Carl a couple of weeks ago, and she was in that other camp, I guess, and is now, as she's grown into the industry, she is seeing it from a different viewpoint now, and she used the expression Nurus. We're seeing a lot of Nurus, the new gurus. And you're absolutely right that they're seeming to negate what is out there in the way of experience. And I listened to that to the No BS podcast when Bill Faith was interviewed, and I wanted to jump in and say, look, we may have been around for 20 years or 25 years or 30 years, and there's some people who've been in this business for 30 or 40 years,
right,
and have so much to share. Don't discount them. They are, we send our kids to school to learn from people who have the knowledge. You don't say to your kids, it's okay, you're coming up and to your high school years, you go out and learn it all yourself because you can do it better. And we used to have a fridge magnet at home when my boys were in their teens, and it just says, teenagers, go out, get a job, buy a home while you still know everything.
I think I've said that to my son a time or two as well. Yeah, it's very true. I think that, there's a lot of well-intentioned people, but one thing that there are people that are hyper-focused on being wealthy or having all the flashiness of wealth that comes with it. And that's fine. I think that there's room for everybody, but I don't want that to be the lure of people like running to the light and thinking like that's the direction they need to go, and not understanding that, again, there's people here that want to help them and kind of hold their hand through the process. If they don't want to have their hand held, but just need somebody there as kind of a, a support, fine. I think we're all here. But it does really, it matters. I feel it matters how we're perceived as, like, again, the old guard or whatever you want to call it. We shouldn't be negated. We should not be cast aside. We should be welcomed in just as much as we should be welcoming them in. It's not a us versus them situation. It's a, like, again, we're greater together. We have a spotlight on our business that, again, we all wanted for so long. We were all, going to shows and going to conferences and talking to our OTAs and saying, hey, we're here. You don't understand us. And we've made a lot of headway. But, like, again, we can just join forces with this. I reference the pie that we're in all the time. And the professionalized vacation rental is like 25% of it. That 75% that's out there is they're all doing great things in their mind, but some of what they're doing is causing strife in a market, which is causing unneeded regulations. It's causing perception within communities that what this type of business is not needed or wanted. There's just a lot of negativity that can come from not being educated or being willing to be educated about what's out there to run a successful business and to be prepared for, again, where we sit right now in terms of the, economic worries and, the downturn in tourism, which really isn't a downturn given that, the numbers are still high. So
yes. Yeah. You mentioned VRMA, and I remember a couple of years ago that they did start encouraging new owners. If you have one property, if you have 3 properties, if you have 5 properties, come along, right. We'll welcome you in. And I can't remember which conference it is, but I recall there was a icebreaker meeting with all these, not just new members of VRMA, right, but those at that stage. And I don't recall it happening since. There hasn't seemed to have been that focus on these people since. Are you seeing something different? Am I missing something?
No, and I think that again, the opportunity was put out there, and then there was just no
Hmm.
I guess no follow through. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's just an enormous opportunity. I am on the membership committee for VRMA, and it's one of the things I just look at the numbers and I think like we have thousands and thousands and thousands of potential members out there. Like, how do we get to them? Is it
Hmm.
partnering with the realtors? Is it partnering with Bill Faith? I don't know the answer, but I just know that doing nothing is not serving us at
Yeah.
this point.
I think that's a great point. And you mentioned partnering with Bill Faith as a possibility. That is
Yeah.
something that he mentioned on that podcast. That there perhaps could be some sort of partnership between, and he's seeing them as definitely as two separate camps,
Yeah.
which I think this is the way that the world is at the moment. You're either in one camp or the other,
Yeah.
which I think is a little unsettling that it's bringing that sort of polarity into our market. How can we breach that gap and get people to the center?
I think it's going to take some of the larger voices. Again, a Bill Faith, he's got a very large audience. The Realtors Association, I mean, they've got, let's think of how many realtors are in this space that don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily consider themselves a property manager per se, but they're managing properties or they're giving guidance to people that might want to manage properties. So there's a lot of areas of opportunity. Engaging with Airbnb is a great example. I mean, they're an OTA, but people get very frustrated that they've become the name of our industry. Well, let's sometimes you got to like get with the enemy and use that the audience that they have, and I think it would behoove them to have the education out there for their partners just as much as it would for the partners to be able to access the information. So there's a lot of different ways we can take it, but I just think again it goes back to like as an industry we have to start elevating more voices, not just 4 or 5 voices. There's so many people out here that
Mm-hmm.
I've met within the last couple of years. Lauren Madewell is one that comes up all the time, and just an absolute gem that the things that she does, and she's so creative and she's young and she's energetic, and like that's what we need those people like her that are in these family businesses. To your point, they've been around for a long time, they're not new. But she's got a lot of great things to say and she can get the engagement, and just having more of those types active on the boards and not having people that are on a board and maybe they're too shy to get out there and speak. And I mean, I'm not one saying that like everybody needs to have a platform, but share the information that you have, whether it be like through somebody else or inviting, a local person who's just opened up a small business that has 3 units, invite them over for coffee and like ask
Mm-hmm.
them what their troubles are. They may be very similar or they may have new troubles you never knew about, we just have to be open.
Oh, that's interesting you raise that because it takes me back, 20 years ago when I came out to Canada and I'd been running my vacation rentals in Canada for the previous 5 years. And so I decided I was going to immigrate and hey, I'm going to start a vacation rental management company because the ones that were around us I didn't think were doing the best job. But I had no idea, absolutely no idea what to do. And I could not get anybody to talk to me. Nobody was in. They talked
Yeah.
about, well, I would talk to you, but that would be sharing our secrets.
Right.
And and then fast forward to today, there are no secrets.
Yep.
Everybody's out there on Facebook and on LinkedIn and wherever they are, wherever they're sharing, and they are sharing. So it is so much easier to find that information if you are a new entrant into the business. But that's only if you want to get it. I wanted to because
Yeah.
that was the only way I could learn because the information wasn't as freely available as it is. But I think what's happening is people come in and they see all sorts of disparate information, little bits of it here and there, and there's nothing. Would you agree? There's nothing that's really coherent.
Yeah, and I think also too is that there's so much information it starts to become noise, and they don't know
Mm-hmm.
like which pieces of that information is like which should I take as gospel, which should I take with a grain of salt? Which should I like completely ignore? And again, and it was funny because just going back to another LinkedIn post I made, because I see a lot of people that come in, and one of the tags that they put on their like bio is that they're an influencer. And it started to dawn on me,
Yeah.
like, who defines what an influencer are? Because you influence me, but you might not be influencing someone else. So we are going to look at you at a, in a different way, and vice versa. And so there was just a question in my mind, like, is it really about the numbers? Because if it's about the numbers, then I'll never get there, but if it's
Hmm.
about content and it's about conversation and engagement in that conversation, then okay, then I'm doing something. Like, people, you wanted to talk to me because of a post that I made. So I think that it's just, again, making sure that people understand that you have to read as much information, or look at as much information, or find as much education as you possibly can, and you'll learn which pieces work for
Hmm.
your business. But at the end of the day, if anybody tells you that this business is, again, we can go back and quote Lauren Madewell, passive my assive, you have to be active in it. You have to be engaged in it. You have to understand how you affect your neighbor, how you affect your market, how you affect the business. I mean, you're part of a really, really an incredible ecosystem, but it's big and it's vast, and it can be very overwhelming. And so one of the things through the conversation on that post that we were referencing earlier was that I likened it to like people who dove into the deep end of the pool and never took a swimming lesson.
Hmm.
There's just a few things that you want to make sure you know before you get into it. But above all, don't be afraid to ask. I mean, that's the biggest thing I would tell anybody is, don't think you know it all. And if you want to know, a million people are out there that are willing to help you. I mean, that's one thing that this industry does better than I think anything I've ever worked with, is that we're all open to help and provide information and provide direction. So we just need to continue to do that.
Yeah, I think there was somebody who posted in a response and just said, get out and network, go to the conferences, and it's been really good to see so many new opportunities. Um, the Damien Sheridan with his
Yeah.
short stay week. I went to
Hmm.
that in Barcelona back
Oh yeah.
in back in May, and it was predominantly a much younger and fresher audience than I've seen recently.
Good.
Bart Sovies in Australia with
Yeah.
his Strive conference, and he put a comment on your post as well. And besides saying, he said this is a business, not a side hustle. Uh, and I work with a lot of hotels. They meticulously plan before they plan what they're going to do before they get into it. And short-term rental should be treated the same. But he then went on to say that he was surprised that he was approached by so many people to
Yeah.
say that they were interested in learning from people who had been around a long time. So maybe that is the thing. It's going to the conferences where that type of collaboration is being promoted,
Yeah.
rather than saying, we are coming up, we're new, this is it, get rid of the old guard, we'll just drive ahead with something very new, because all those people out there are rooted in the earliest part of this century, and are, they've lost it in terms of modernity and being up to date. Rather than doing that, these new people who are doing these other conferences, like Damien, like Bart, and there's some other ones that are going on through the US and Canada, have more of a collaboration
Yeah.
feeling about it, and I like that. And certainly in Barcelona, I was quite blown away with the shift in the age group. Maybe it's because maybe it's just because I'm getting older. Everybody seems young now.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that feeling all the time. No, but it is nice to see, and I know that our team over in Europe, they've attended several of those conferences, and they'll say the same thing. I mean, it's like just the shift in where people are putting their attention, and who's showing up at these conferences. I mean, yeah, there's the traditional ones that have been going for years, but all of a sudden there's a whole new segment of fresh faces. And I know, again, through LinkedIn, I've had people reach out to me that just like, hey, I just want to connect, or I saw your post and it was so interesting. And that's good, because I think, again, if you would just engage and just listen and find a few people that you can, ask a question to, or just listen to, or just get some ideas from it, it really sparks, I think it sparks the right conversations, and it sparks people to follow the right people. And again, whenever there's anything associated with, do this and make $1 million, I always go like, not against it. But at the end of the day, it's like anybody that's been in this business knows it takes a really long time to make a lot of money. You have to work really hard and put a lot of attention, a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears into it. And, you just mentioned, to me off camera that, when you sold your business, all of a sudden you had free time that you didn't realize that, you were going to have, because you're in the business, and when you're passionate about it,
Mhm.
and all the things that you have to do to drive it to be successful, it's a time consuming thing, and it's not passive. It's not something that you can set it and forget it.
So how can the people who are listening to this and thinking, I do have this wealth of knowledge, I would like to mentor somebody. How do you go about it? A couple of maybe a couple of years ago, in the podcast community, there was a call for mentors, and whoever was doing this put together this bank of people who are interested in being a mentor, and the upcoming podcasters who had an idea and didn't know how to take it forward, and matched them up. And I had a mentee in Africa,
Oh,
and
wow.
she was absolutely amazing. She was encouraging women to, to take new roles and to apply for jobs that had traditionally, would not have been open to them. And that was what her podcast was about. But she didn't know how to get it out there, how to talk about it, how to invite people onto a podcast. So it was relatively, I mean, it was great to have these discussions with her about, um, about approaching people and asking them to come on a show, and it was very, very simple. And her show's now doing really, really well.
Nice.
But that was just a relationship that came because somebody went out there and said, "Look, I've got this list of people who want some mentors, and
Yeah.
I have this list of people who would like to have a mentee. How can we go about doing something similar?"
Um, well, Heather, you and I can start our own mentoring database. No, I think, again, people need to just ask. Like, there's no shame in that, and I think that that's one of the things that I wish I had known sooner. Was just, if you don't have a mentor that's like naturally there, ask for one. Like, there's people that want to do that. They want to share their knowledge, and we've got, again, 25, 30 years of knowledge you want to like transfer over, and it, there's opportunity there. But I go back to VRMA. I think VRMA has an opportunity to create some sort of mentoring group. They did a program during, I can't remember what they called it. I want to say it was like Meet Your Neighbor or something like that. But it was during COVID, where they were like attaching people like monthly with new faces in the industry, and you could get connected with, somebody in technology, or somebody who was a
Mm-hmm.
property manager, like just different areas. And every like month you would get a new person, and you just, have a coffee chat. But we were doing obviously Zoom calls during COVID. But I met a bunch of people that way. And it just, I think, again, you putting yourself out there for someone to reach out to you, and vice versa. Like, if you want information, go out there and seek it. But if you want to offer information, you have to go out there and offer it. You need to
Mm-hmm.
be out there and be centered. So I think, LinkedIn is a really great place. I think that working more collaboratively with people, again, in the camp that perceives us being in two camps. Annette and Sarah, their Thanks for Visiting podcast is
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And what they're doing with that is so good. And I love it because they're so focused on just like, showing truly how it is to run a business, because they're in it day to day, but they're offering up that education. And I think just partnering with more people like that, whether it be we do it through the podcast community, or we do it through VRMA, or we just do like a bespoke conference that is just about, getting people together for that purpose. I don't know what the right answer is, but I just know that, together we can do it.
Yeah. So you ended your post by saying we've got a strong position of voice. Let's use it. to bring it all sides together and make it stronger.
Yeah.
So we've sort of covered a couple of things in terms of that. I'm still sort of struggling how, maybe it's just me having this sort of Pollyanna thing that we could reach out and bring all these people who are confused and thinking that they should sell their places because they don't know what to do with them, or they'd like to grow and they don't know how. And I'm thinking that they're all going to come flooding in and respond to our outpouring of experience and expertise,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's going to happen. So.
Probably not. I mean, it's like that, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, all you can do is just make the water available. So I think again, if for me, it's just about being out there and being present. And when I see things that resonate with me, what I've learned is that if it resonates with me, it might resonate with one or two other people. And that's all I
Mhm.
need to be, is just speak to one or two people. And then those two people speak to two people, and it multiplies kind of downstream. But when we see things that we question, or we may not agree with, I think it's good to have a conversation about it, and it's good to have opposing views without it being confrontational. But the more we have a dialogue, the more information we can share, and again, button up and make sure that there's not falsehoods or clickbaity things that are shared out
Mhm.
there. I mean, the data post that everybody's been talking about, recently. I mean, that's a great example. I mean, you can manipulate things to tell whatever story you want. So I think having somebody, or having people in general, that called that out very quickly, that speaks volumes, because I don't know that would have happened 5 or 6 years ago. I think so.
Mhm.
We definitely, as an industry, recognize we have a voice and we have a spotlight. It's just a matter of getting it a little more unified. And I'm not saying that there needs to be one spokesperson or 10 spokesperson, but I think that we all are, the professionalized side of it, if you want to, call it that way. It's our responsibility to make sure that we call out the falsehoods, and make sure people know where they can go get good information that will help them make good decisions.
So if you had overall control of VRMA,
Oh gosh.
where would you like to see? What would you like to see a VRMA conference looking like in 5 years' time, if we were to bring people together
Yeah,
like
I think
this?
and there's been a lot of conversation for years about this, like a couple of different tracks for people to join. So again, like if you only want to manage 3 or 4 units, like this is the things that you need to be aware of. And if you want to manage 10 and scale to 50, this is what you need to be aware
Mhm.
of. But you want to be in 27 markets, and there's just various tracks of the business that I think that we could present, instead of trying to be, I'm not say that that's the way it is, but I think sometimes trying to find the balance between small and large scale makes things vanilla. We're just not
Mhm.
presenting things in enough detail, with enough depth of understanding or conversation available, to people to get them excited about wanting to be part of it. So we have to, first of all, make them excited that this is a great place to be. And again, it's a safe space to share, safe space to learn, safe place to ask questions. Get them excited about that, and then create tracks of information that will resonate with
Mhm.
each type of group. Because again, an operator in an urban market like Atlanta doesn't need to know the same stuff that someone in Panama City Beach or Destin, Florida needs to know. I mean, there's
Mhm.
just different ways of operating, but there's no reason that we shouldn't have all of that available for you to kind of cross pollinate thoughts and conversations.
It was interesting the way they did it at a short stay week. So the first day was book direct. It was just about direct booking and strategies and ways to go about it. And then there was scale rentals, and the first day of scale rentals was for property managers from naught to, I think it was naught to 25 properties. And then the second day was the larger managers, 25 upwards. And that was quite interesting, the content that went into those different scale rentals days. You could certainly go to both, um, but it was very
Yeah.
focused, and I thought that was such a great way of doing it. Um, But we shall see. We shall see where VRMA goes
Yep.
over the next
Yeah.
5 years. And of course, there's so many other
Oh yeah, there really is. I just use
events.
that as it's our association. We need to make
Yeah,
sure that everybody's participating. So
if and I think Amy's done the most amazing job with the women's summit,
yeah,
because I've been to the past 2 women's summits. I'm going to this one this coming December. Can't wait for that.
yeah,
And that to me is such a great collaborative event. It does bring everybody in. I've seen people there who have just one property, and
yeah,
then the larger property managers and people coming together like that and really learning not just the mechanics of running a company, um, and operating a business, but also all the other stuff that goes on in the periphery of it.
yeah.
And uh, did you write that post about imposter syndrome?
Oh, like this week? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that resonates very much with me. I've had imposter syndrome from the I think the day I started my first job, and I still have it. And I thought,
yeah,
well, that would be a great topic because I think it's very common, a great topic to bring to something like the Vacation
yeah.
Rental Women's Summit,
Absolutely.
because it's something that it doesn't matter. It doesn't look at age and
Mm-mm.
what camp you're in. People are out there with that emotional feeling of imposter syndrome. So I just wanted to bring that up because, yet another post that you made. You're really inspiring me, actually, to go out, and because I have imposter syndrome, I tend not to post because I don't want to be judged.
Yeah.
But you are inspiring me to do so now.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I will say that it took a lot for me to get to this point. But I think COVID was, again, it was a catalyst for me, because I think everybody was in their kind of fight or flight mode. Like, how are we going to get through this? And trying to not necessarily be relevant, but just be present and be engaged. That I found it was okay to say things, because, again, it may not resonate with every person that sees it, but if it resonates with a few, then that's
Mm-hmm.
great. And then the few becomes more than a few, and then that, it over time, it kind of gives you a little confidence in what your thoughts are. Like, maybe you're not an idiot, maybe you're not, maybe this information that you have in your head is valuable. So yeah, I encourage everybody to get out there and have those conversations. I mean, there are unfortunately trolls, if you will, that get out there and will comment negative stuff, or they just always know best. And, you just kind of ignore it. But for the most part, most people have been engaging and shared their thoughts and countered or asked questions. And so, if I inspired you to get out there, I mean, I know you have, like I said, an incredible wealth of knowledge to share with everybody. So please do it. Please help share all of it. It's only going to make us better.
So on a last note here, Annie, if we've got listeners out there who are perhaps, decided that they're going to listen to an old guard podcast and would like to get some help or some assistance in growing their business and becoming more professional at it, what would you suggest that they do?
Well, I would definitely listen to your podcast for sure. I would also suggest that there are just so many. Obviously the podcast that I do with Alex Husner, it's Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. But there's the No BS podcast. There's just a lot of great podcasts out there to get that information. I would say, again, people can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very active and available on there. That's the best way to engage with me. And then I think that as far as getting information goes, like, no question is a stupid question. That's one thing I know for sure, is because you're asking it, somebody else wants to know that answer too. So just ask as many questions as you possibly can.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been saying that to people for years. Just ask the question. There is no such thing as a stupid question. But sadly, there are those trolls out there who do
Yeah.
jump in and tell people they're stupid or they should have used better punctuation.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's tough when that sort of thing impacts you. But yes, I think you've made a very wise point. They're there. They always will be. and they really service their own needs and not anybody else's anyway.
Yep.
So ignore them. But yeah, thank you. You had some very wise words there, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I really
Yeah.
have. I think it's one that needs to be going forward. I think we've got to find this way of reaching the people that we can help, and with the wealth of knowledge, with everybody that has been in the business for some time, we've all got it to share. So thanks so much for sharing yours today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oops. It doesn't seem to want to stop. How weird. I don't know what's up with... I'm just going to leave it to roll. My...
They'll edit it out.
Yeah. I don't know what's wrong with... Do you use Riverside?
We don't. We tried it, and we just had terrible time with it. So we haven't been... Yeah.
I don't know what's... I mean, it's working. Everything's uploaded as
just
it
doesn't
should
want
be.
to stop.
It doesn't want to stop.
Apparently, it thinks we've got something more to say.
The other red button is the leave button.
Oh. Well, Heather, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
That was really
nice
great.
To talk with you.
Really enjoyed that. I think I hope people will listen to that and think about getting out there and doing more and being being more helpful to others. They're out there in the communities. My Facebook group. People are in there, jumping in there every day. Somebody asks a question and 10 people jump in with an answer.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But it's trying to get those who are perhaps still sitting out there in the wilderness thinking that there is no help. But,
and that is true. And again, I think it's just going to take like repetition, being out there offering. And I have people all the time that will send me proposals for stuff like, could you look at this and give me feedback? This is a business, and sometimes I look at it and I'm just like, this is above my skill set because it's way deeper. And I've sent a lot of stuff to like Simon or, other people in the business. But I think, again, we're all so interconnected with each other. It's like, if I can't help somebody, I'm absolutely going to do my darndest to find them somebody that can.
Oh gosh, yes. There's so many people who are out there so really focused on their own space.
Yeah.
Steve Trover, I send people to Steve, or I send them to Sue Jones, or I want to know about hiring. Well, I know the people to send you to.
Exactly. And I think it's just putting yourself out there and being, one, being vulnerable to like go, okay. And, it's funny, saying that there's no stupid questions. It's great advice to give, but there are times when I'll go to ask a question and I second guess myself, third guess myself, for 2 days before I ever actually ask the question. But it's once you get the momentum going, I feel like it makes people unstoppable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, just getting over that barrier of getting out there and sharing is a good one. So Annie, thank you. Thank you. It was lovely.
If you need anything, if you need anything, let me know, and let's keep brainstorming this mentoring thing. I really think there's something there.
Yeah, I love this idea. As I said with the podcast one, I think it was really simple. Just a question put out: do you want to be a mentor?
Yeah.
But it's actually going out and finding the people on the other side.
This is very, very true. And maybe it's something that we can, like Amy's conference would be a great one to like test it out at. Like maybe at the women's conference, we match people up. Like, do people want to be mentored or do they want to offer mentorship? I did that with, there's a group, Women in Travel Thrive, that was put together by a lot of people that I worked with at Expedia. And they did that during COVID. And I started out on that path, and then just the podcast took me away from it, but they're still doing it. And they actually have conferences now that they do this mentorship, and they give away like educational, like certifications to women. It's all across all like aspects of travel. It's not just like OTA stuff, but it's there. People want it. Like, we just have to find a mechanism, I think, to get it out there.
Mm-hmm.